Sorry about that. Had to just plug in the AC adapter for the laptop. Thought I had already done that, but I guess I did not. So the MX HomePro editor is cloud-based software, and you don't need a computer to program it. You could do this from any internet-connected smartphone, but we'll talk a little bit more about that very shortly. So what we can see here is a snapshot of all the hardware that consists of the MX HomePro system. So we can see to the left we have the H500 hub. We've got the MX HomePro mobile app, we've got the R500 remote control, and the additional ZW2 bridge. Just to let you guys know, we will not be covering any type of Z-Wave programming today. That will be next week's course, which also takes place on Monday, just in case you guys are interested in that. And if you haven't registered for the class, I highly recommend you guys do so you can learn a little bit more about what the MX HomePro system can do with Z-Wave. So along with controlling all of your AV gear, so that's all your audio and video equipment, you can also incorporate a couple two-way modules. So some of those two-way modules are for like two-way lighting, and the current two-way modules that we have are Philips Hue, Lutron, Lutron Radio Raw 2. When we go into the MX HomePro programming section of this course, I will show you where you can locate this stuff, as well as where you can locate an integration guide that covers a step-by-step process as to how to incorporate this into your MX HomePro system. Setup is actually extremely easy, and most of these two-way modules simply require an IP address or some type of username and password login. Of course, each one is going to be different depending on which two-way module you're using, but I'm just giving you the general gist of how that works. The other thing you can do with this is temperature control. So you can actually incorporate a Nest two-way module or a Honeywell two-way module, and the Honeywell two-way module works for a couple different models. I would definitely recommend you refer to the integration sheet so that you can see which specific models those are. And of course, you can also connect Z-Wave thermostats as well as Z-Wave lights. So just to kind of add to that and more section that you guys are seeing on the screen, that and more section not only refers to the fact that URC is constantly making third-party partnerships and trying to add more two-way modules for control, but with Z-Wave control, you can really incorporate anything that is Z-Wave compatible. And that's really going to open the doors to a lot of different products when it comes to MX HomePro. And speaking of Z-Wave, a couple of things that you can integrate with Z-Wave are locks, cameras, and lots of other things. So, there's things like specific sensors, like flood sensors. You can do any type of Z-Wave cameras, Z-Wave locks, Z-Wave thermostats, and this can all be controlled directly either from the R500 remote control or from the URC Home app. And we'll discuss that a little bit more very soon. And just to give you some more information on Z-Wave, so the ZW2 really unlocks the door to Z-Wave for the MX HomePro system. It adds integration for lights, locks, thermostats, and thousands of other compatible Z-Wave devices. You can create scenes and house modes that can be accessed either remotely or on-site that your customer can go ahead and do. And they can do this using the URC Home app for remote access, or they can use the R500 remote control for on-site access. The ZW2 also has the ability to be connected either wired, which is the recommended setting, or wirelessly. Now keep in mind, for any type of wireless communication, you would still need that hardwired connection for the initial setup. And the other cool thing is that Z-Wave can actually send notifications via email or text, and this is a setting that actually your customer can set up. This isn't something that you guys necessarily have to set up, although you are well within your range to do so. And the cool thing about this is that when you go ahead and create a Z-Wave system, you actually enable your customer to set up their own version of that same Z-Wave system with limited access. And what they can get access to is changing general information, so such as name, installation site, time, date, things like that, and as well as choosing what type of notifications they want to receive. We dive into all this stuff a lot deeper in our Z-Wave course, as well as how to set up those notifications, where to make all these settings changes, and how that customer portal looks like. But for today's purpose here, I'm just letting you know what is available and what can be done. So let's take a real look at the MX HomePro system. So we start with the hub, which is model number MX H500. So this hub has 4 rear IR ports, and it has 1 front IR blaster that's pretty powerful. It also has a mounting plate located on the bottom panel of this, and this can be connected either hardwired or Wi-Fi. Again, URC always recommends a hardwired connection for reliability and stability, but you can use Wi-Fi as long as you have a good router, and if it's reliable and you can trust it, by all means, go ahead and use that Wi-Fi connection. The fact that it has an IR blaster kind of makes that Wi-Fi look a little better, gives you a little more flexibility in terms of where you want to go ahead and put this device. Now this is the brains of the operation. This is where the entire MX HomePro programming file gets saved into. There is no method of extracting that saved file, just in case you guys are coming from CCP, where you could always extract the file from a remote. This is not the case with this. This is all cloud-based software, so the actual programming file stays saved on the cloud. But this is a pretty nifty little device. It's pretty powerful for what it does. You can have up to 5 rooms in a system, which means you can have one of these in each room. You are required to at least have one of these per room, but you can have up to 3 hubs in a room. And why would you ever want to add an extra hub? Well, you could add an extra hub in case you need additional IR ports, or you just need another front IR blaster that can really reach out and do things. You can also control things via IP with this device as well. So this device allows for IR communication either via its rear IR ports or the front IR blaster, or IP communication, which is strictly through the network, which stands for Internet Protocol. And the commands for those Internet Protocol devices are all located in our database, which I will show you how to access when we go into the programming section. The next thing we've got here is the MX HomePro application. Now the MX HomePro application comes free with the purchase of your hub, and your customer can go ahead and sign into their account, and they will go ahead and open up and show their home. And of course, when you're initially programming this, we're going to talk about that initial setup towards in a couple slides, so you can really see how that works. But this is a pretty nifty application to couple with the MX HomePro system. And one of the other things that this application has that the R500 remote control doesn't have is a rooms menu. So this is really designed for a customer who's going to be using more than one room. Of course, just get started with the system. All you need is a hub. Once you get the hub, you've already got a controller to go ahead and start controlling the system. But once you've expanded beyond the room, this application becomes extremely useful because of that rooms menu. It allows you to switch between rooms, which is something that the R500 remote control does not do. And of course, this is available for iOS and Android, and this is available for any iOS or Android device, whether it be a tablet, a phone, a Canary, whatever it is. As long as it's running iOS or Android, you're going to be able to do what you got to do. The other option, well, the other device that's here, it is an optional device, although we do really recommend getting this for your customer, just because having a physical wand-based remote with hard buttons is something that's a lot easier to use to navigate through channel surfing or anything like that. Customers really tend to like that hard button remote. It gives them a sense of stability there. This is a Wi-Fi remote. There is no IR blaster in front of this remote, so there will be no learning onto this device. So you may be wondering, how do you learn IR onto an MX HomePro system? And you do so by using the front IR blaster on the H500 hub. But more information on the R500, since that is what we're talking about. You can have direct control of two-way modules as well as Z-Wave devices, or Z-Wave scenes and devices, directly onto that remote control. Now, to control Z-Wave, you do need to log into the customer's account from the settings menu of the Z-Wave device, of the R500 remote control. And I'm going to show you where you would do that on the owner's manual, because that's really where it has the best representation of how to show that. So we'll look at that later, though. For now, I just want you guys to know that this can do that. So the benefit of having this remote control, despite the fact that it is a single room solution, so if you do have 5 rooms or 3 rooms or 2 rooms or whatever the case may be, you would need one of these remotes per room if your customer did want this type of solution for those rooms. Then the last thing that's available here is the ZW2 bridge. Again, this is optional. This is not required to get started with an MX HomePro system. This is only if your customer wants Z-Wave control. If your customer is not interested in Z-Wave, there is no need to add one of these to the system. However, if they are, this is an absolute must. So to get started, really all you need is an MX HomePro hub, the H500, with the MX HomePro mobile application. That'll go ahead and get you started. The MX HomePro editor, so like I've said before, you don't need a computer to do this. It is compatible with Windows and OS X, so just something that you guys want to keep in mind. It's cloud-based programming, so it doesn't get saved onto your computer, so there is no compatibility issues with that. And you can program an MX HomePro system from any internet-connected device. Technically, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and do it on your phone. As long as it's got an internet connection, you'll be able to program this system. So we're going to talk a little bit about the initial setup, and what the initial setup really consists of is getting us our MX HomePro programming key so that we can go ahead and start programming a system. So the first thing you want to do is you want to ensure that the router is connected to the internet. So you can always do this by just checking on your phone, connect your phone to the internet, and just make sure that you're able to access web pages and such. That'll go ahead and let you know if the router is being able to reach outside of the network and pull information in. The next thing you want to do is go ahead and connect your H500 to its power supply, which it comes with a 12-volt power adapter. It's in the box. Go ahead and plug that into the wall, plug it into the rear of the hub, and you want to go ahead and connect an Ethernet cable between the router and the hub. Now, I did say that this hub can be Wi-Fi, but you do need this initial hardwired connection for the setup. And this is how the setup is going to work. So you would hit set up a new system on the MX HomePro application, and on the R500 there's supposed to be a screen that says Get Started. The screen did not show up here. I think I may have forgotten to add it, but it's just a simple screen. It looks similar to this, except in all it's going to say is Get Started. When you select Get Started, it'll take you to this screen, which you see presently, and this is only on the R500 remote control. So for now, let's keep our eyes on the left-hand side here. On this screen, you're going to go ahead and select the network. You don't need to do this on the app because the app gets the network information once the phone or mobile device is automatically connected to the network. Once it's connected to the router, it'll automatically bring that information in. However, the remote control does not have that option since this is the first time it's being exposed to the network. So you'll go ahead and find the network you need. You'll go ahead and enter in the password. And then after that, what you're going to go ahead and do is it's going to automatically search for a hub. So when you're using the application, it'll automatically jump into this page next. When you're using the remote control, after doing the Wi-Fi setup, it'll jump into this page. Once you're on this page, your device is going to scan the network for an available hub. Now, it finds the hub based on its wired MAC address. So you want to go ahead and go onto the physical hub itself, turn it upside down, and look for that wired MAC address and make sure that it matches up with what's showing up on the remote control or the application. If it matches what you're seeing, you just go ahead and select it. And you'll go ahead and be presented with a programming key. Now this programming key is going to become very important because this is what you need to get into the MX HomePro editor. Now keep in mind, you only need one MX HomePro programming key per system. So let's say I was setting up both of these devices for a single room. If I started on the application, I can disregard the programming key on the remote control. Although I do still need to go through all these steps. In other words, I still need to connect the remote control to the network, and I still need to get to this screen here. I do not need this secondary programming key. The only thing that would become important here is the remote control ID. And the reason that would become important is because that's how the MX HomePro software recognizes all of the R500 remote controls. So again, even if you were setting up both of these devices for the same room, the setup process is the same to get it started. Now, if you did want to go ahead and get this connected to Wi-Fi, whether you're using the hub or whether you're using the application or the remote control, you will hit this screen that says base station connection. If you read through this screen, it'll go ahead and tell you if using Wi-Fi, unplug the base station from the router. So once you get to this screen, and this screen comes before the programming key, once you get to this screen, feel free to unplug the Ethernet cable and select OK, and your hub will download that wireless information from the device you were using, whether it be the remote control or the application. If you want to just go ahead and continue using hardwired, just select OK. And again, make sure you take note of that programming key. So now that we've got that all out of the way, now we're going to go ahead and jump into the MX HomePro editor. But before we do that, does anybody have any questions, any comments, any questions, any concerns? Please drop them in the questions box. We'll take a couple seconds just to see if anyone's got anything on their minds. Okay, so looks like you guys don't have any questions as of yet, so that's all good. No problems there. So when you log into the MX HomePro editor, actually let me go ahead and get to that screen so that you guys can see how the process works. So typically you would go ahead and select register a new system, and in this section here is where you would enter in the URC programming key. If you already have a dealer account, you could go ahead and just sign into it after entering in the programming key. Otherwise, you would have to go ahead and select the I need to create a user account, and that would go ahead and jump you through the process of creating a new account for your customer, which you can then go ahead and add to your dealer account. If you don't have a dealer account, I do suggest you hit the Help tab here and go to this option here that says Apply for a Dealer Account. It's a simple form you guys got to fill out. Once you fill this out, you'll be contacted by URC headquarters, and you'll have an account not only for a dealer account for the MX HomePro system, but you'll also have an account for programming Z-Wave. So you get to knock out two birds with one stone with that sheet. And if you do have any questions on dealer accounts, I will show you where you can find documentation as to where you can get information as to all the features and benefits of it, why it's important, and things that it allows you to do that a regular account does not allow you to do. But we're going to go ahead and log into a system so we can start programming. So it automatically jumps you into the home overview. Now, this home overview is empty because we haven't programmed anything into it. So if we hit this little drop down here, we can see our hub, we can see it via the MAC address, and we can see this little key here which tells us it is the primary controller. This little pencil icon here allows us to change the name of it if we wanted to. And just like the pencil icons here will allow us to change the name of anything that it's associated to. So this is the room name. If I wanted to change it, I could go ahead and select this and I would be able to do that. And same thing with the actual room name. So just some information for you guys to know. But the bulk of everything is going to take place here in the programming menu. So if we wanted to add a remote to the system, and what this means is to add an R500 to the current room, we would go ahead and select this option here. Once we select this option, it would scan the network automatically for any available R500 remote controls, and it would list them based on that remote control ID. And what you would want to do is just make sure that it matches that remote control ID. Unfortunately, I'm in the URC studio and I only have one Ethernet cable here, so I am accessing this remotely from my desk, but I do not have an R500 connected to the network. I'm still trying to get that done, but the engineering Wi-Fi is actually pretty boggled down with testing devices, so I'm having a hard time getting that process going. But this is where it would show up. It would show up based on the remote control ID, and you can see the remote control ID on the actual device. You would select it, you would hit finished, and that would end the process. You'd have an R500 remote control connected to that room. Now, if you did the initial setup process on an R500 remote control to begin with, you will not have to worry about this step. So the next step here is add entertainment devices to the system. And this is where you're going to add all your AV gear. So we'll go ahead and start off by adding a television. And just to kind of show you guys, you can go ahead and hit this down button here and see the drop-down list. And you can either scroll down this list and select something, or you can just quickly type something in and select it, which we'll do that later, but for now let's just do this. We can change the name here, so we're going to call this Living Room TV. We'll go ahead and hit Next. Now we can search for a manufacturer, so same thing, we could scroll down, or we could just go ahead and start typing and select our brand. So this is where things look a little different. If you guys are used to programming CCP or total control, this screen here probably looks very, very different. You know, everything's labeled by code set number, which can be a little confusing. And if you guys want to see something that's a little more traditional, you can hit this search by model, which allows you to search for the specific model number of your device, and it will find the code set associated to that model number. Or we can do what's called search all models. And what this allows us to do is it kind of looks like CCP, where we can go ahead and see all the available model numbers in the database. And then we can just go ahead and select one. So let's go ahead and pick the biggest TV we find here. So let's grab one of these 85 inches. So something I highly recommend you do, and that's that you test all these commands, or at least you test your code set before continuing. So to do that, you would just hit test it. Now, with MX HomePro, these tested commands, they come out of the front IR blaster of the hub. So you want to make sure that your hub is pointed in the right direction of all your equipment if you're going to be testing any of these devices. And to do so, you would simply hit the command. It'll tell you test command sent. Now, it doesn't tell you that it was confirmed because that's something that you need to see visually to make sure that the command has reached your device. So if I was testing the power on command for the Samsung television, I'd want to make sure that the television's turned off so that when it turns on, I know that the command worked. So if everything works, you would just go ahead and press save, and that'll bring you to the device IR control settings. So this is where we can either choose to route our emitters if we are using the rear emitter ports on the H500 hub, or we can go ahead and select wireless IR, and what that does is it uses the front IR blaster of the device, of the hub, and that's what we're going to go ahead and do. So here we see living room TV favorite channels. So TVs, cable boxes, and satellite boxes, they all have a favorite channels module, which is brought to us by GraceNote. It's a trial software, so it's free for now. We don't know when it will stop being free. GraceNote has not notified us of that, nor have they notified us with a pricing for the service. However, what this service does is it allows your customer to enter in their zip code, their service provider, and it'll allow them to select favorite channels from the list of channels up by their service provider. And not only does it give them quick access to those favorite channels, but it also allows them to see what's playing. It does a lot of things that you can go ahead and incorporate, and we do have documentation for which I will show you later on towards the end of the class as how to set it up. This is something that is set up by your customer. Of course, you can assist them in the process of doing so, but we can show you some documentation that will inform you as to things that favorite channels module can do. So since I do plan on adding a cable box to the system, however, I will not be using favorite channels on this device. And there we go, we've programmed our first device in MX HomePro. If you go to the Home Overview tab, we can see that that device is listed right here. It's listed by Living Room TV, shows the model number, and you see this little star here. This star stands for the favorite channels module. If it's filled in, that means that the favorite channels module is enabled. If it's empty, like you can see here, that means that it is not enabled. We can change the name by using this pencil icon, but we can also do a couple different things here. We can change the amount of commands that are sent from an automated activity. The repeat is always at 3. The button press commands repeats, we can also change that as well. And this is something, if you're familiar with CCP, you know what this looks like. This is something if you double-clicked on an IR command in CCP that you can change, or if you're a total control person that you can change from within a driver. This can be changed from the Home Overview menu. You can also change this from editing a device menu. So this is the easiest way to access it, in my opinion, but I will show you another way when we get there. So let's go ahead and add something else here. Oh, but before we do, I want you to see that now that we've added an entertainment device, these 3 options have opened up. They were grayed out previously, but now they're open for programming. But we only have 1 device in the system, so it really wouldn't be wise to set up anything next. So let's just go ahead and set up another device. So this time we're going to go ahead and set up a cable box. And yeah, we'll call this cable. That's fine. And I use Verizon, so let's go ahead and use that. So we can see Verizon has strictly 2 code sets. This is something where you could just go ahead and select the code set and test it and see if it works. So we'll just go ahead and do that. And for this device, we're going to go ahead and route it to IR port 1. Now for this one, we will use favorite channels. Now in terms of programming, this is all you have to do to set up favorite channels. Done. So now favorite channels are enabled for the cable device. And just so you guys can kind of see real briefly how that looks, I'm going to go ahead and show you the guide, which this is available on that little help tab. So, it gives you with a favorite channels page, it gives you live programming information, and it does a feature that's called Fave Surf, which allows your customer to add...
Hey, Elvin, it sounds like your sound dropped off.
Did it? Can you guys hear me now?
Yep, better. Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, this favorite channels module gives you live programming information. It allows you to set up what's called Fave Surf, which allows the user to add up to 12 different genre-based favorite channels and allows them to quickly cycle through those different types of channels. So this module is available on Total Control, on MX HomePro. Those are the only two that it is available on. And it would look like this. Your customer would just go to their cable device, set up favorites, select their region, zip code, enter in their provider, and they would select their favorite channels like this. Just to kind of give you an example of what that live programming feed looks like, I just want to locate that real quick. So this is how the favorite channels module looks after it's been set up. And this is how the live feed looks like. So they would select the channel, it would let them know what's playing, and then they could just go ahead and hit this little play button here, and it would launch to that channel. So it's a pretty cool little module that is included. That's a trial free period right now. We don't know when it's going to end, but it's been a trial for a pretty long time. So when we find out more information, we will go ahead and put it in the URC control room. Something else that I want to show you on this tab, I'm sorry about that, is if we needed to make any changes to that, such as adding an enter command at the end of the channel or a select command at the end of the channel, depending on the cable provider, you may need one of those. You can also change the delay between the digits, and you can also just choose to disable the favorite channels command. We already discussed what the pencil does, and of course the trash can will delete the actual device that we have there. So the next thing we'll set up is an AVR. So we can just type in AV, and we'll see AV receivers and amplifiers. We'll rename this to living audio. Whoops. Okay. We'll search for a manufacturer, which I'm going to pick a Sony. Now, with AVRs, I highly recommend using the search by all models, but because MX HomePro can do IP, I want to go ahead and show you guys how to program an IP-based system here. So we're going to select network control down here, and we're going to hit search all models. So since we hit search all models, it resets it to IR controlled, so make sure that you always go back to network controlled. If you're doing IP and you hit search all models, or anytime you hit search all models, keep in mind that it defaults back to IR controlled. So now let's go ahead and look for an IP-based. Here we go, we'll use this one. So now if we hit test it, you'll see that this looks a little bit different. So it pulls the port number automatically for you from the database, but you do still need to manually enter in the IP address. Now, of course, I'm not entering in an IP address that is correct because I don't have this AVR here. But once you do that, once you enter in the IP address, you can go ahead and test the command, and it'll go through the network. Now, this won't give you a testing confirmation because it's going through the hub. It's not going through the front IR blaster. It's, oh, never mind, testing error, because my hub is not here with me. It is in my office, not here, but that's fine. So if the command went through, you would have seen this little testing confirmation here. And of course the device would turn on, which would be the biggest form of confirmation. So we're going to save that. It will automatically go ahead and pull the IP address that we entered in the test screen, so always good to use that little test option there. And that adds our AVR to the system, so now we can see that it is there. So the next thing we can do here is we can go ahead and set up volume control. So we're just doing a very small, simple system. We're not incorporating any two-way modules. However, I will show you where you can add two-way modules and how easy they can be. But we're going to go to set up volume control, which this is similar to a term that we all know, which is called punch-throughs. So we can select this. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to choose one or more devices for volume control programming. So we're going to pick the devices for control. So let's say we want to do cable, and the living room, well, I'm sorry, the entertainment home menu. So from these two devices, where do we want the audio to come from? So where do we want the audio to be controlled for? So if we read this, it reads, choose the device that controls sound volume when using entertainment home menu / or cable. So we want that to come from our living room audio. So once we've got that selected, we hit finish. And that's it, our punch through is done. Anytime we're on the home menu screen, our volume will be controlled by the AVR. And anytime we're on the cable box, the volume will be controlled by the AVR. So the next two options here are what I call simple power off button and of course the simple activity. These are not macros as we know them. What they are, it's a help screen that allows your customer to cycle through commands that would be typically used in a macro. Now these can be helpful when you're creating a macro and you run into toggle commands, but otherwise this is not where you would set up a macro as you traditionally know within CCP or Total Control. We're still going to cover this, and I'm going to show you where you can set up those macros that you would know from CCP or Total Control, and we will even set those up. But I just want you to see this here, and so you can kind of grasp the idea of this. So to do the power off help screen, or the power off simple power off, we would select the device that we want. And essentially this was designed to combat toggle issues, so specifically with cable boxes and TVs. So when your customer is ready to finish watching TV or finish using their living room equipment, they would hit the power off button. Now if I leave these two boxes checked, on that power off menu when they press that button, they're going to see living room TV as the first option and then cable. Then from there, what you would go ahead and do is associate the command. So whenever they press the living room TV option on that menu, it'll run the power off command for that television. Or if you have a toggle power command, which I don't know if this one has, here we go. Toggle power, so this is really designed for a code set that doesn't have toggle power. If you have, that doesn't have discrete power. If you have discrete power, don't necessarily need to use this. If you have toggle power, I highly recommend you use this, just because if anybody ever physically goes to turn off the television, it'll screw up the tracking, and that's something that's going to lead to some inconveniences for your customer. So whenever they go ahead and hit this living room option on their help menu for their simple power off button, it'll run the toggle power button command. And the same thing can be done for the cable device, which our cable device only has discrete power on and power off. But either way, after you do that, you would just go ahead and hit finish, and that would complete the process. And again, this is not an all-off macro. When your customer presses the power button, don't expect them to see everything turn off. Instead, the remote's going to pop up a help menu, and it's going to show those two options, and you're going to go ahead and select, well, they would go ahead and select which device they want to turn off. Of course, it won't just show up two options. It'll show up whatever options you add into it, whatever devices you add into it. But that's the process of setting up that simple power off button. Now, simple activity works in the same way, except this is really designed for TVs that have a toggle input command, or any device that has a toggle input command. So if we select this, which I don't think this has a toggle input command, but you can see here that we could go ahead and select toggle input or even toggle navigation. So that's where, we can go ahead and use the up and down arrow. So there are some TVs where you would hit the input button and then you would use the up and down arrows to select the input, as opposed to just using a direct input command. In those instances, that's where this feature comes into play. If your customer has one of those lower end TVs that simply has toggle input, that's where you would use this. And when you select the input, the navigation key there, you'll see this notification screen here. At times, it is required that the user navigates a list, and that's pretty much exactly what I just told you. So you can just hit OK to this, or you can go ahead and select Don't Show This Again. I'm just going to hit OK. Then I would hit Next. Now here I would search for the toggle input command, which this TV does not have because I picked a pretty high-end television. But for the sake of argument, let's just go ahead and say this is toggle input. It's not up. Then here we would go ahead and select. Oops, sorry. We have to pick the power on command first. So it helps to read this little section here. I was running a little too far ahead. So select the command that turns the device from the list. Power on does that. I don't think this had toggle power. So for argument's sake, let's say this has only toggle power. We add the power command. Good. Now we select the command that allows the device to change to the correct input. It can be a command that cycles through all the inputs, or one that jumps directly to the correct input. So if we did have a toggle input, which we don't, well, we're going to go ahead and say info is input. That's what we would do. And then we would select finish, and that's it. So once we hit finish and we've downloaded to the system, when your customer selects living room TV, what it's going to do is pop up a help menu. The help menu is going to have two commands on it. Living room power, which cycles on and off the television, so they can choose to hit that or they can just skip over and go to living room input. Living room input will go ahead and cycle the commands for the input on the television. Now, since we have navigation enabled, if they hit the input command once and they see the little input screen on their television, they can use the up and down arrow keys to navigate that input menu. And that's what these two little options are for. They aren't designed to be full macros. What they are designed to do is to overcome the hurdles of toggle commands. The next option here under more programming choices is add an additional controller. So this is if you wanted to add another hub to the system. You would simply hit the refresh the list, and this would scan the network that the computer is connected to and look for a hub. So there are two hubs that are connected to the network that I am on, even though there are no hubs in my room. I don't know how that works. It's because I'm on the R&D department's network, but that's fine. So essentially you would just select one of these, enter in a name for it. You could obviously make it a different name than what's showing up here, which I won't add this because I would like to actually show you how to add a room, so I'm going to save this hub for that. Real simple, you just hit finish and the process done. So the next option here is add advanced devices to the system. This is where you add two-way modules. So for example, if I wanted to do something like Sonos, I would just select Sonos, hit next, change the name for my Sonos system, and then here I would just enter in the MAC address, which you could go ahead and find on the back of your Sonos device. So just for argument's sake, I'm making the most fake MAC address I've ever seen. And that's it. So now when I go to the home overview, I can see that as my advanced device. Granted, it will not work because I put in not the correct MAC address, but if you wanted to see how to go ahead and set up all of these two-way modules, go to the Advanced Devices Integration page, which is available on the Help tab. And here we can go ahead and select any one of the available two-way modules. So for example, since we were doing Sonos, you just select Sonos, and we see the step-by-step process of doing it. Nice and simple. And you can do that with any of these manufacturers that you see listed here. Just feel free to select any of them, and it'll take you automatically there. All right, perfect. So the next option here is program a different room. It's grayed out because currently we don't have any other devices. Well, we don't have any other rooms in the system, but if we did, this is where we would access that. Before we jump into the advanced menu, I just want to ask if we have any questions going forward. All right, well then let's go ahead and jump into the advanced menu. So the advanced menu, this really has the categories where you can do a lot of customization with MX HomePro, as well as this is also where you can set up macros that we all know and love that are all automated, that just run a list of commands without any help menu, without any questions, without asking you if you need permission or anything like that. So we're going to go ahead and select Automate Activities on the Entertainment menu. Now we see we've got a couple options here. So the first one is to create an all off button. So we'll go ahead and do that. This looks pretty familiar if you're familiar with CCP. It almost looks like a macro window. So what we would do here is we would go ahead and start with a device, and since we're doing a power off button, we just want to go ahead and select power off and add it to the macro tree, well, to the macro window here. Same thing with cable, and same thing with our AVR. So we can also add delays. So let's say we need a delay in order for all this to communicate. We can just go ahead and do that like this. And we can use this little slider to rearrange our commands. Now, if we wanted to incorporate Z-Wave scenes into this, we could use the Special Functions button, and we can Oh, I'm sorry. This is just to add variables or if-else statements. If we had a Z-Wave scene in here, what we would do is we would actually select the device and we would select our TRF-ZW device. And then under here, we would have the available scenes that we've programmed on that ZW device. So if you need any type of variables or if-else statements, though, that's where you would go to the Special Functions tab. And you can test this entire power off button by selecting this option here. So if this command, if all these commands are to our liking, we just hit next. Now, we can actually choose to enable that help screen on this macro. So let's say you have a full system, but the cable box is still only toggle power. What we would do is just select this option here, and after this macro plays, it'll show the help screen to the customer, and they could choose that toggle power command just in case anybody ever manually turned on and off that cable device, or if it did a system update to the cable device and it turned it off or turned it on, they could use this help screen to send that toggle command and make sure that the tracking is always working. But for today's class, we're just going to select this option here, which disables that help screen. So after this macro plays, nothing will show up on the remote. It will just still be the entertainment menu. Hit next. And that's it. It's programmed. We have a room off button programmed in the system. So let's go back to continue in room. And now we're going to do the build automated activity on an entertainment page device. So what this would do is it would build an automated activity onto an actual device button. So these three devices will show up as buttons on the MX HomePro app or on the remote control. So what this selection does is it adds a macro to one of these buttons. Now keep in mind when you're doing this option, it will always jump into that device at the end of the macro. You cannot jump into another device. And by jump, if you're familiar with CCP, that means jumping into that menu of that device. So if we set up a macro on the cable device, after the macro plays, it's automatically going to jump into the cable device subpages. So that'll have all these subcommands such as DVR, on demand, all that stuff. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to hit next. We'll start off with the TV. So the power on command. Whoops, sorry. We'll add a delay. Next thing we're going to do is change the input. Now don't hold me as law that you need a 5-second demand after turning on a TV. Every TV differs, and I do not have an 85-inch TV to tell you that it does actually work in 5 seconds to start changing input commands. Turn on our cable device. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to change the input on the AVR. We're going to have our cable box connected to the AVR, which actually we do still need to do this. Sorry guys, give me 1 second. I'm tripping over myself. So then we'll go to our audio device, power it on, and then we will do our set-top box input. We'll add another delay, and we'll rearrange this a little bit. Alright, so here is our macro. It'll turn on the TV, switch the TV to HDMI 1, it'll turn on the cable box, turn on the AVR, and change the AVR to the set-top box input. So that all that will go ahead and launch us into our cable device. We hit next. Now we can add the help screen at the end of this macro if we wanted to. And we could add it for either the cable box, the TV, or the AVR, but we're going to disable it again. And we'll hit next. And that's it. Now there's a macro on the cable device, and whenever that cable device is selected, it'll go ahead and play that macro and jump into the cable page. The next one allows you to build an automated activity on a new entertainment device page. So this is really useful if you want to hide devices. So we're going to go ahead and do watch cable. And we're going to essentially add the same macro, which I'm sure you guys are getting bored of seeing me do. So I'm just going to add one command there, and we're going to call it a day. You guys already saw me add all that other stuff. So we'll hit next. We'll disable the screen for this as well, and we'll hit next. The last thing we can do here is build a scheduled entertainment event. So we could do something like a good night macro. And this could be something as similar as like a all off command. If you have Z-Wave scenes such that allow you to lock the doors and turn off the lights, you could incorporate that here. It would be pretty cool to have that as a real world scenario there. So we add our commands that we want in this scheduled event and we hit next. So now we can either have it selected by the user where they will use either the application to select when they want this event to happen, or we can set it up right here at a specific day. And we could do this for every day at 10 p.m. or something like that to turn off everything. This would be pretty cool, especially if you're using this in like a kid's room, so the kids know once it's past their bedtime, everything will just shut off and they know to go to bed. And that's all the options that are under automated activities, so we will go ahead and select Finish Automated Programming. Now if we go to Home Overview, we can see that we have our Good Night event scheduled here, and we could disable it or enable it by just selecting this little off option here. So the next option here just allows you to edit your automated events. So if we wanted to edit our watch cable macro, so maybe we want to add more commands to it, so we're just going to add one more. And then we could just go here, hit next again, and it saves that change to that button. And that's what you would use that option for, real simple. So next thing here is add a room to the system. This is how you can add an additional room. Make sure that your hub is connected to the network. Let the MX HomePro editor do what it has to do, which you can see the little progress bar loading at the top. So we're going to go ahead and select this one, and we're going to call this Elvin's bedroom. Now when we go to the home overview, we can see that there is the other room, and there is the hub that is associated to that room. And are we currently in that room? No, we're currently in the living room. If we wanted to change to that room, we could just go down here and select Program a different room, which I'll show you towards the end of this. We are running a little short on time, so I will have to go through things a little bit quicker. Edit the entertainment menu. This is where you can change icons. You can hide devices. So let's say I wanted to hide this. I could change the name of this device. I could choose to hide the text. I'm going to hide this device, and I'm also going to hide the cable device here as well. Even though I know I set up a macro on there, I just did that to show you guys how to do that. We're going to hide this device as well. And on our watch cable, we're going to go ahead and change the icon. Now we can only choose icons from this list currently. That could change later on, but at this time you do have to use the icons that URC has provided for you. Always provide feedback to your URC sales reps. That way you can kind of let them know what future features you would want included into MX HomePro or into anything else that we make here. Feedback is the only way we can create progress. Once we've got everything we want to look, we can just go ahead and select Finish, and we're brought back to the Advanced menu. Edit device layouts and function. This allows you to change all the sub-menus of your device. So this allows you to rearrange things if you need to adjust repeats while button is pressed, to adjust the macro repeat settings and the minimum repeat settings. You can do that from here as well as the home overview. You can also choose to hide a button. Now keep in mind that these repeat settings are specific per button. So if I change this one here, which I would have to hit the pencil icon, or I guess not, I can't change it from here. Oh, here we go. Use custom settings. So if we wanted to do something like this, if we go here, you'll see that it is different. And if we want to just go back to the default, we just use this. We can hide pages. I said we can hide buttons. We can rearrange things by using this little switch icon. And we can rearrange, so let's say we wanted to move this command with this one. We would just go ahead and hit swap buttons. and it swapped the button for us. So nice and simple. That's what this page is used for. We'll hit finish to save our changes. A little progress bar is taking its sweet time. All right, perfect. Here we go. So the next thing here is learn codes from an IR remote. So we can either choose to create a new device from scratch, which if we choose to do this, we'll need to fill out this general information. And what this does is it allows the MX HomePro system to know what type of device you're trying to add to the system. We could choose to add to an existing device. So let's say most of the codes work, but we need one or two that aren't available or we don't have, but we have on the original remote. We could either choose to add it to an existing button. Now if we choose to add it to an existing button, it'll go ahead and override that command. Or we could go ahead and add a new button. And we choose a function as a template, and what this will just do is it'll just show up on this right here. But once we learn to this button, it'll override the command that's on there. Learn commands, just like in CCP, override pre-programmed commands. So real simple, just make sure that the remote you're trying to learn from is pointed in front of the IR blaster on the H500 remote control. A few extra things I wanted to show you. If you guys are wanted to know how to link your Z-Wave account to your R500 remote control, you can do that by just looking onto the owner's manual of the device, and we just go into the settings menu. You do that from accessory account info. To access the settings menu, which is also important to know if you ever need to change the Wi-Fi, you hold the home and entertainment button for over 3 seconds, and you'll see a little progress bar load up to let you know that it is working. That's where you can change the network settings, but you would go into accessory account info and you would type in the username and password of your customer's UI7 account. Other things I want to show you guys, if you need any of this documentation but you don't have access to MX HomePro, go to MX HomePro Get Started, go to Software and Resources, and all that documentation is available down here, as well as marketing material that you guys can go ahead and put up in your shops or anything like that. Last couple things to show you is on the URC University. So here you can take a look at the training calendar. You can see updates as to all of our live trainings as well as online trainings such as webinars. At our live trainings, we do offer lots and lots of discounts on our products. So we are currently over here on the 27th. So we've got this webinar again at 12 p.m. And the only live training we've got is an MX HomePro training in Elk Grove. Under our course catalog, you can see all of JR's e-learnings, and these are all step-by-step. They go over a lot of what I went over today, but in much more detail and at a slower pace, since you don't have to work within an hour to get all this done. And you can go ahead and get started from creating a dealer account. That way you can see all the benefits of a dealer account. You can go ahead and do the introduction course, which is very similar to what I'm talking about today. Just really tells you what MX HomePro is, and kind of briefly tells you into getting into programming. Programming a simple system is a lot more of what I did today, so you guys can really see things step by step. And course catalog, you can also learn different things from whether it be Total Control, CCP, and of course MX HomePro. The last thing I want to show you is on the Help tab here, which you can also access it from the university. Sorry, not the university, from the control room, and that's just dealer access. If you guys want to know more about the dealer account, I highly recommend you guys take a look at this. Gives you all the information in regards as to how to create a dealer account, why you should create a dealer account, and all the benefits you get from creating a dealer account. So that's all I've got for you guys today.
Hey,
If you
Elvin, there
guys have,
was a question about asking if the dealer account is different from the control room account, and the
yes,
answer is
it
yes,
is.
it is. They're two separate accounts.
To sign up for a dealer account, which it's pretty simple to do, all you got to do is you can go to the help, you can go into MX HomePro, which is just mxhomepro.com. You do not need to log in to do this. So watch, I'm going to log out, and this is how the web page looks normally. All you have to do go to the Help tab and hit Apply for a Dealer Account. That opens this link here. Fill out all this information, and it'll sign you up for an MX HomePro dealer account as well as a Z-Wave account, so you guys can program Z-Wave as well.
And it's free. There's no cost for the account or anything.
Right. So if you guys have any other questions, just please go ahead and feel free to drop them in the questions box. Otherwise, thank you for joining us on today's webinar. Hope you guys got some good information, and hope you guys have a great day. Any questions, just please drop them in the questions box, and JR and myself will get to them. Thank you, guys.